The sky of creation trembled with newborn fire. Across the rivers of molten light that coursed through Ginnunga Gap, the yawning void between worlds, the first fires of being clashed with the endless frost. From that collision came life. From life came order, and from order, rebellion. In the beginning, the gods believed themselves untouchable, architects of destiny. But the more they built, the more the shadows lengthened. And within those shadows, something ancient stirred. Among the gods there was one who never belonged entirely, Loki. Beautiful, cunning, and clever beyond measure. Loki was both friend and menace. The other gods laughed at his tricks and tolerated his lies, for he could amuse and aid them when he chose. But even Odin, in his fathomless wisdom, never fully trusted the silver-tongued wanderer. Loki was the son of the giants, kin of chaos itself. Within his heart burned a fire that could create or destroy. And when he met Angrboda, the giantess known as the bringer of sorrow, their union would ignite a prophecy destined to shake the pillars of Asgard. From their bond came 3 children. The eldest was Hel, half of her face radiant as a maiden's, the other rotted and pale as a corpse. Odin banished her, giving her dominion over the dead. The second was Jormungandr, the vast serpent who would encircle the earth, his body coiled in endless hunger, hurled him into the sea. And the youngest, born beneath a sky trembling with thunder, was Fenrir. He was no ordinary child. Even as a cub, his eyes gleamed with unnatural brilliance, and his breath came out in plumes of cold mist. When Odin looked upon him, he saw not a beast, but a storm, a silent prophecy wrapped in fur. The seers of Asgard whispered that this wolf would one day grow so vast that his jaws would span heaven and earth, and that in the final battle, his fangs would close around Odin himself. The All-Father listened, grim-faced. The threads of destiny woven by the Norns cannot be cut without consequence, but perhaps, he thought, they can be delayed. Thus did Odin summon the children of Loki. He cast Jormungandr into the endless ocean, stripped Hel from her mother's arm, and sent her beneath the roots of the world. But Fenrir he brought to Asgard, not for mercy, but for watchfulness. The gods would raise him where they could see him. And so began the tragedy of the wolf and the world that feared him. At first, Fenrir was small, no larger than a hound, though stronger by far. The gods fed him, played with him, even jested as he tugged at their cloaks and gnawed on shields. None dared come close after the first few years, for his strength grew each sunrise. All feared him, save one. Tyr, god of war and justice, saw in Fenrir something deeper than darkness. He fed the wolf with his own hands and spoke to him without deceit. Fenrir grew to trust him, as any faithful companion trusts the one who keeps his word. It was Tyr who realized that the wolf understood far more than he should. Fenrir's gaze followed every whisper, every uneasy laugh between the Aesir. When the gods conspired, Fenrir lifted his head. He knew. He always knew. As the centuries turned, the wolf's shadow stretched wider, and with it grew the terror of the gods. The prophecies could not be forgotten. The wolf of Loki would bring about the twilight of the gods. Fear ripened into desperation. So Odin devised a plan, not of courage, but of control. The gods first forged a chain called Lething, thick as a mountain's root. They approached Fenrir in the meadows beyond Asgard's gates, pretending cheer. "You are strong," they said, "stronger than any beast alive. Will you let us test your might against this chain, mighty one?" Fenrir eyed them, his breath steaming in the cool air. He saw no malice, not yet. "If this is a game to amuse you," he rumbled, "I will play." He lay down while the gods wound the chain around his limbs. When they stepped back, expectant, he smiled. A single flex, a tremor through his massive body, and the chain shattered. The ground quaked. Metal fragments flew like shrapnel through the sky. The gods laughed, but their laughter carried unease. Odin narrowed his one remaining eye. The wolf's strength was growing faster than even prophecy foretold. They forged another chain. Dromi, heavier, harder, twice as strong. Again they lured the wolf, their voices coated with honeyed deceit. Again Fenrir complied, and again the chain broke. Though this time, it took struggle and strain. The gods stepped back, breathing in awe and dread. It was then they admitted defeat. No ordinary metal could hold him. Desperation turned cunning. Odin sent Skirnir, servant of Freyr, into the deep halls of Svartalfheim, where the dwarves shaped wonders in the heart of blackened stone. There, by the hiss of molten rivers, they forged a third binding, not of metal, but of impossible things. They called it Glipnir, a ribbon as soft as silk, yet stronger than reason. It was spun from 6 things that no longer exist in this world: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spit of a bird. When it was done, it shimmered like starlight and weighed almost nothing. When Skirnir returned with the ribbon, the gods marveled, but their hearts quaked, for magic always demands a price, and Fenrir would know it too. Odin ordered the gods to journey to the island of Lyngvi in the lake of Amsvartnir, a place where heather grew crimson and the air hung thick with mist. There they met Fenrir and showed him Glipnir. The wolf eyed it closely, suspicion kindling in his gaze. "This ribbon seems frail," he said, "too slight even to bind a child. Why do you mock me?" The gods smiled nervously. "We only wish to test your strength," they said. "Surely a wolf as mighty as you fears no thread?" But Fenrir's instincts stirred. The gods were uneasy. Their smiles were wrong. "If you mean no treachery," he said slowly, "then one of you shall place your hand in my mouth as a pledge of faith. Swear you will unbind me when I wish it." Silence fell over the Aesir. Even Thor looked away. None dared risk it. None, except Tyr. Without a word, the god of honor extended his right hand and laid it gently between the wolf's terrible fangs. "Tyr, you above all should not lie to me," murmured Fenrir. "I know, and that is why I must," said the god quietly. They wrapped Glipnir about the wolf's body. The ribbon slipped through his fur like water, glinting in the sunlight. When they stepped back, Odin raised his hand. "Now, wolf, show us your might." Fenrir pulled once. The ribbon held. He pulled again, harder. The earth shuddered. Trees tore from the ground. Rocks split open. But Glipnir did not break. Panic flared in his eyes. The gods stepped back as realization dawned. "You lied," he growled. And then the air erupted with a roar that split the heavens. Fenrir twisted, bit down, and tore Tyr's hand from his arm. The god's scream echoed across the lake, mingling with the wolf's furious howls. The gods cheered, their triumph laced with terror. Fenrir spat blood, thrashing until the ground itself groaned, but the more he fought, the tighter Glipnir drew. Finally, Odin ordered the chain's ends tied through a massive stone called Gjall and fastened deep beneath the surface. A second rock, Thwidi, was wedged atop it, anchoring the prison. Still, Fenrir struggled. So they seized a sword and drove its hilt between his jaws, forcing them open, the blade holding his mouth agape. Blood and foam streamed from his maw, seeping into the earth until it formed a crimson river. Von, the river of hope. The gods stepped back, panting, their hearts heavy. Fenrir's eyes glowed like molten suns, burning holes in their souls. The silence that followed was worse than his howls. From that day forth, Tyr bore his stump as symbol of sacrifice, not victory. The gods returned to Asgard, proud of their cunning, but none dared look toward the lake, for they knew it was not victory they had won that day. It was reprieve. Silence reigned after the gods left Lyngvi. Only the sound of the river Van whispered through the heather, its crimson waters thick with the echo of betrayal. Bound beneath the weight of the mountains, Fenrir grew still. His legendary strength, his pulse of wild fury throbbed in the darkness. The earth quivered under his heartbeat. Time itself passed like a blade of grass bending to eternity. The wolf no longer howled, for his throat was pried open by the sword's hilt, keeping him mute. Yet in that dreadful quiet, his rage deepened into something older and colder than sound. Through endless days and nights, he stared toward the heavens, his eyes unblinking, burning like dying stars. The gods celebrated their victory, but among them lingered silence. Tyr no longer laughed at their feasts. His right arm hung ruined, the flesh scarred and hollow where Fenrir's jaws had crushed it. When he spoke, it was in whispers seldom heard by others, for he alone had looked into the wolf's eyes and seen what none of the others would admit, that justice had been broken. The gods had caged innocence out of fear, and in Asgard, such wrongs do not fade easily. Odin himself could find no peace. Though his ravens Hugin and Munin brought him tidings of all worlds, the memory of the wolf's roar haunted his dreams. He began to visit Mimir's well more often, drinking deeply of its waters of wisdom, despite the unbearable price it extracted from his soul. For in every vision, the same fate awaited him, a gaping maw, the gleam of fangs, and the void of Fenrir's mouth swallowing the light of the world. Far across the 9 realms, strange signs began to unfold. The sun dimmed for moments longer each winter. The frost came earlier, cutting deeper. Mortals prayed to the gods, but their voices were met only by the wind. And somewhere beneath Yggdrasil, the 3 Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, continued their weaving. Fate spun its thread, unyielding. Legends say that during this age, 2 other wolves ran across the sky, Skoll and Hati, children of Fenrir. They chased the chariots of Suna, the sun goddess, and Mani, the moon. For centuries, their pursuit had been eternal and hopeless. But time corrupts even celestial predators. As the balance of the cosmos began to weaken, so too did the pace of the chase. And one twilight, Hati's jaws finally snapped shut on the moon's pale fire, while Skoll swallowed the sun whole. The world sank into endless night. Ragnarök had begun. Deep in his prison, Fenrir felt it. The trembling of the earth, the breaking of borders between realms. Everything hums to those it touches by prophecy. His body quivered as the fetters of Glipnir, forged from the breath of fish and the roots of mountains, began to fray. The ribbon that no sword could cut thrummed with weakness. Somewhere above, Yggdrasil itself groaned as if mourning. The dwarves who had forged Glipnir felt the change too. Their furnaces dimmed in Svartalfaheim, their hammers stilled. "It begins," they whispered, eyes wide with ancient dread. Even they knew that when fate awoke, no craft nor cunning could chain it again. In Asgard, Odin gathered the gods upon the golden plain of Idavall. The air churned with storm. Valhalla's gates glowed like molten gold as Einherjar, the slain warriors, risen again from feasting halls, prepared for battle. "The time foretold by the seers has come," thundered Odin. "The wolf stirs in his bonds, the serpent writhes in the sea. Loki's brood comes for us, and no god shall hide from destiny." The gods armed themselves. Thor lifted Mjolnir and tightened his belt, Megangirth doubling his strength. Freyr fastened his golden armor, though he now lacked his sword. Heimdall stood at the edge of Bifrost, horn at his lips, eyes ever turned toward the trembling horizon. But none felt the shift of fate as sharply as Tyr. As he looked upon his lost hand, phantom pain throbbed through the stump, But beneath it, something else. A calling. Justice, once broken, was come to collect its debt. On the lake island of Lyngvi, rain fell without end. Lightning lanced the blackness, striking so near that stones split in heat. Fenrir did not flinch. His fur was matted with centuries of dirt and blood, but the fire in his eyes was undimmed. The ground trembled beneath him. Cracks ran through the stones anchoring his bonds. Glipnir's silk shimmer began to dull. Then, with a sound like the tearing of creation itself, the fetter snapped. Fenrir stood. His limbs, numb from ages of restraint, groaned like ancient trees. For the first time in millennia, he shook the air with a mighty roar. The sword that had pinned his jaws flew aside in a burst of flame. The river Von boiled red. The mountains echoed his cry all the way to Jotunheim and hell's cold gates. "Father, you who cast me here, who chained me for fear, I come," he called into the storm, his voice thunder and hate. And Loki, bound beneath the serpent's venom in his cave deep below Midgard, heard. The poison dripping onto his face burned as he laughed through agony. "Come, my son, let us finish the work of prophecy," he whispered. The end spread like wildfire through the realms. Jormungandr uncoiled from the depths, his tail lashing waves that swallowed continents. His body encircled the world, his breath raining venom. In Niflheim, Hell's legions of the dead rose with her command. The ship Naglfar, built from the nails of corpses, drifted upon black seas, carrying her and Loki toward the land of gods. At its prow stood the wolf, immense, radiant with destruction. He had grown until his back scraped the clouds. His mouth stretched from the sky to the earth. Stars vanished in his gullet. Each breath he drew scorched the air. Each step he took made the mountains bow. From across the endless ice of Jotunheim, the giants stirred. Surt, Lord of Fire, raised his flaming sword in the south. The frost giants of the north marched to join him. Even the winds changed direction, all things drawn toward Vigrid, the vast plain where doom awaited. As the gates of Asgard sealed, the air trembled from the blasts of Gjallarhorn. Heimdall's call echoed through every realm, the sound that meant only one thing: the end. The gods gathered, thunder rolled, but Thor was silent. Freya's tears made the golden fields dark, and Odin, the Allfather, stood apart, one hand on Gungnir, the other stroking his spear point in quiet reflection. He had known this day would come since before time began. His eye, traded for wisdom, had shown him not victory, but necessity. Death was not his fear, only forgetting. "This is what must be," he said at last. "Let us meet it with honor." To the warriors of Valhalla, he gave command. "Fight beside me, die beside me, for today the wolf feasts." The storm clouds parted just long enough for dawn to gleam across the horizon, the last dawn of the world. Across the plain of Vigrid, forces gathered, gods, warriors, giants, and beasts. Fenrir stood at the head of Loki's host, his shadow consuming miles. Lightning flickered behind his jaws. His growl rolled like an earthquake across heaven itself. Opposite him stood Odin upon Sleipnir, his eight-legged steed. The All-Father's armor gleamed with runic fire. Around him rallied Thor, Freyr, Heimdall, Frigg, and the legions of the Einherjar. The two armies paused, suspended upon the knife edge of destiny. For a heartbeat, all creation seemed to hold its breath. Then, chaos erupted. The serpent's venom burned through the air, colliding with Mjolnir's thunder. The ground shattered under their clash. Thor slew Jormungandr, but staggered 3 steps and fell dead, choking on its poison. Fire giants roared. Valhalla's warriors fell like stars. And through it all, Fenrir advanced, his feet crushed gods and men alike. His jaws opened wider, wider, devouring light, devouring sky. Odin met him at full gallop, Gungnir poised for the heart. The spear struck, the wolf hardly noticed. Fenrir lunged forward, jaws engulfing rider and steed, swallowing them both whole. The Allfather was gone, but the story did not end there. Through the storm strode Odin's son Vidar, silent god of vengeance, the one who'd spoken little and listened long. Upon his feet he wore the shoe made from all the leather scraps ever cut by humankind. He stepped into Fenrir's lower jaw, forcing it down, and with both hands seized the upper. Muscles torn, bones cracking, he heaved until the wolf's jaws split apart. The sound was like worlds breaking. Fenrir fell. The ground split beneath his vast body. The wolf's fire dimmed to ash, his final breath a gale that swept the battlefield clean. And when silence returned, so did the darkness. The seas rose and drowned the earth. The skies burned. Every tree, every mountain, every home turned to ruin. But above the smoke and embers, Yggdrasil endured. From its hidden grove, the two last humans, Leif and Leifthrisir, emerged, their breath shivering in the new dawn. They would repopulate the world when the sun's daughter, reborn, rose again. Among the new gods that would return, Vidar stood tallest. He bore no crown, only memory. The name of Fenrir, whose body lay beneath the fertile soil, became legend. The wolf who devoured the gods was not remembered in shame, but as the necessary darkness that allowed creation to begin anew. When the fires of Ragnarök had burned themselves to embers, silence fell again, vast and heavy. The seas had swallowed mountains. The sky was veined with ash and fading lightning. The stars hung dim as cooling coals, and the wind that wandered over the plain of Vigrid carried only the scent of ruin. Amid that desolation lay the body of the wolf, Fenrir, the great devourer, whose death had torn open the fabric of the cosmos. He was immense even in stillness. His fur, once black as midnight, smoldered red with the dying reflection of flame. His eyes, dimming, mirrored the broken heavens. From each breathless fang dripped the final dew of the world that was. He had killed Odin, the All-Father, and in so doing had ended an age. Yet even as his life slipped into silence, nature stirred, remembering its pulse. Because in Norse thought, nothing truly ends. What dies returns differently. What burns becomes the seed of something new. The Norns, the weavers of fate, never ceased their spinning. Even as Yggdrasil trembled beneath fire and frost, they gathered the loose strands of destiny, knotting them into new beginnings. For from the ashes of gods and wolves alike, the cycle would begin again. In the long night after Ragnarök, the world floated in shadow. The waters of ruin rose high and cleansed the earth of blood. It is said the sea finally fell still, and out of it rose land again, green, young, silent. Where once stood Asgard's golden towers, now bloomed meadows. The sun renewed herself, daughter of the one devoured by Skoll, her light shining gentler, but no less powerful. And on that radiant morning, a whisper carried through the new air, soft yet vast. The echo of a howl, not the sound of fear or rage, but the memory of wildness, cut free from its chains. Fenrir was gone, yet not forgotten. The new gods and mortals who emerged after the cataclysm looked upon the world with humbled eyes. They no longer spoke of eternal rule or unbroken order. They understood, in ways their ancestors never could, that chaos was not their enemy, it was balance. Odin's death, Thor's fall, Fenrir's liberation, these were not separate tragedies, but necessary verses in the same cosmic poem. The Norse did not see time as a line, but as a circle forever folding upon itself. The wolf's rebellion was not evil, it was inevitability, the world's heartbeat correcting its own rhythm. Centuries turned. Scholars and poets sang the tales of the wolf who devoured the sky. Yet behind the horror, many sensed something deeper. The story of Fenrir is not a parable of cruelty. It is an allegory of the limits of control. When the gods bound Fenrir, they believed they were safeguarding the world. But in truth, they condemned themselves. Fear of prophecy led them to act unjustly, and through their injustice, they fulfilled the very fate they feared. The lesson lies crystal clear. Power bound by fear becomes tyranny, and tyranny always devours itself. Tyr's sacrifice remains the moral heart of that myth. Unlike Odin's strategy or Thor's strength, Tyr's act was pure consequence. He trusted the wolf and paid the price. His missing hand echoes through history, a reminder that whatever is bound unjustly, be it creature or conviction, will one day tear free, taking more than chains with it. To the Norse mind, Fenrir embodied nature untamed. His hunger mirrored the endless winters, his fury, the tempests that punished and blessed in equal measure. To fear him was human, to understand him was divine. Each howl was a hymn to the wild, to an honesty unsoftened by comfort. As the new sun climbed, the surviving gods, Vidar, Vali, Magni, and Modi, walked the renewed earth. They found in the grass the weapons of their fallen kin, cooled by rain and kissed by moss. Vidar, the silent one, said nothing, but in his eyes burned the reflection of his father's final battle. He did not gloat. His vengeance had been justice, but justice carries no joy. Rather, he looked upon the plains and murmured a word only the wind could hear. The wolf was not the enemy. The chain was. In the valleys of the reborn world, mortals would tell this tale around their fires. They would speak of the Wolf of Doom, not merely as the destroyer of the divine, but as the herald of renewal. For every civilization needs its twilight, every creation its destroyer. To deny that is to live half a truth, and so Fenrir's name lingered, whispered in reverence and fear alike. Farmers invoked him during storms, hunters carved his likeness on blades, warriors painted his eyes on shields, believing his spirit fought beside them. His myth survived in sagas sung by skalds through centuries of snow, crossing from pagan age to modern mind, transformed but never forgotten. What makes the legend eternal is not its scale, but its reflection. Fenrir is in every story where freedom meets fear, every era when power builds walls around what it cannot understand. To bind what threatens us may buy peace for a while, but peace built on denial always trembles. The gods' choice was not unlike our own. When we chain others to preserve order, do we not bind ourselves? The wolf's tail remains a mirror for the human soul. Our fear of change, our hunger for control, and our yearning to be seen as gods of our own making. Yet the myth ends with the birth of a new world, not the victory of one side over another. The balance returns, the circle closes, the howl fades into harmony. Listen long enough to the wind across the forests of the north, and you may hear it, that faint, lingering growl beneath the rustle of leaves. It is not threat, but memory, older than words. It reminds us that beneath the surface of civilization, something wild still lives within each soul, a fragment of Fenrir's fire, the pulse of the unbroken chain inside us all. It whispers a question older than gods. What would you do if freed from every fetter? Would you build or burn? Would you devour or would you rise? The Norse answer was simple: both. Destruction and creation are twins. To be alive is to bear both in equal measure. So as the saga ends, remember the wolf not as monster, but as mystery. He was the bite and the breath, the darkness that makes the dawn seen anew. In his undoing, the world found its way to rebirth, and in his story, we find our own reflection. Fragile, fierce, and forever chained to destiny. The tale of Fenrir is not a warning, it is an awakening. If this journey through the fire and frost of Norse legend stirred something in you, that edge where myth feels like truth, then let the howl of the wolf be your echo. Subscribe, share, and step further into the mythic. Because the ancient stories still live, waiting for a voice to speak them once more. The world may end, but the story never does.